Now let's discuss some key takeaways from Section A, the obligations to meet the needs of eligible children with disabilities under IDEA. The section reiterates that the IEP is the vehicle for delivering a free, appropriate public education, FAPE, in the least restrictive environment to students with disabilities. The IEP requirements include assessing, developing, reviewing, and revising the IEP for behavioral supports. This may include the ARC addressing the behavior needs through annual goals, modifications, supports for personnel, supplementary aids and services, and/or related services. Whatever is necessary to enable the student to advance appropriately toward attaining behavior goals. IDEA also requires ARCs to consider the use of positive behavior intervention strategies and other strategies to address the behavior concerns, and this is specifically addressed in question A3. It also goes on to reiterate that an ARC should amend a student's IEP if existing behavioral supports are not effective in addressing a child's behavior needs. The section emphasizes how it is critical that IDEA provisions designed to support the needs of children with disabilities and ensure FAPE need to be appropriately implemented so as to avoid an over-reliance on or misuse of exclusionary discipline in response to a student's behavior. Failure of an ARC to consider and provide for needed behavioral supports through the IEP process may result in a child not receiving a meaningful educational benefit or FAPE. Failure to make behavioral supports available throughout a continuum of alternative placements, including in a regular education setting, could also result in an inappropriately restrictive placement. Not to mention, failure to provide behavior supports and strategies could also lead to behaviors inconsistent with a school or district code of conduct, resulting in consequences such as removals or disciplinary measures. The collection and analysis of behavior data will allow ARCs to make informed student-level decisions when developing or revising IEPs and/or behavior intervention plans. This may include the team developing a root cause analysis in order to take a detailed look at the behavioral patterns to understand what's causing the behaviors or possibly why the current behavior strategies are not effective. The ARC may need to look at not just the student's current strategies, but at the school systems in place. Are positive behavioral systems in place in the school? And how can the school or an ARC team ensure they are used with consistency and fidelity? Section B is an overview of IDEA's discipline procedures. So some takeaways is IDEA does not define discipline. IDEA does explain the rights of students with disabilities and school authority when using exclusionary discipline measures, such as suspension, expulsion, alternative placements. For the purposes of this question and answer, discipline is intended to mean the consequences a school imposes on a child who violates a school's code of conduct. IDEA does not prescribe specific disciplinary actions a district must take, but it does set limits. For example, IDEA does not preclude a district from disciplining a student with a disability for violating a school's code of student conduct, like any other student. But it does preclude a district from doing so when the disciplinary action results in a change in placement and then is determined to be a manifestation of the child's disability by the ARC. And finally, a key takeaway from this section is that OSEP emphasizes that it is not aware of any evidence-based support for the use of restraint or seclusion as an effective strategy in modifying a child's behaviors related to their disability. And every effort should be made to prevent the need for the use of restraint or seclusion. Restraint or seclusion should not be used except in situations where a child's behavior poses imminent danger or serious physical harm to themselves or to others. OSEP reiterates that the use of positive behavior interventions and supports and other strategies is key to addressing the behaviors of a student with a disability that impedes their learning or that of others. ARC should consider and incorporate into a student's IEP other interventions and supports that are evidence-based to address the behavior needs. Using an evidence-based approach to support and respond to student behavior needs will assist personnel in addressing disparities in and reduce the use of exclusionary discipline. In OSEP's video summary of the Behavior Discipline Guidance Package, OSEP staff provided some considerations to reduce the exclusionary discipline. They suggested that states, districts, schools, and early childhood programs should consider reviewing and enacting policies that restrict or prohibit the use of certain disciplinary practices in particular situations or for particular groups of children. They should also be focusing on preventing the need for exclusionary discipline before it occurs through proactive, systematic approaches while recognizing that there may be instances when a child's behavior, such as if a child is causing physical harm to self or others, warrants possible exclusionary discipline. They also suggest prioritizing the creation of a positive school climate, which fosters safety and promotes a supportive environment with respectful, trusting, and caring relationships. So here are some KD related resources to assist you with applying those key takeaways we've mentioned so far within the document. Section C discusses change in placement. Some of those takeaways are the U.S. Department of Education explains that exclusions taken outside of IDEA's discipline provisions, which occur because of a child's behavior and result in denials of access to and significant changes in a child's educational program, could be considered as part of the 10 days of suspension and could also constitute an improper change in placement. Those could include when a school administrator unilaterally informs a parent that the student with a disability may only remain in school for shortened school days because of behavioral issues, or when a student with a disability is not allowed by the teacher to attend an elective course because of behavior concerns. These types of actions are generally considered disciplinary removals unless all three of the following factors, or guardrails as we often call them, are met. 1, the student is afforded the opportunity to continue to participate in the general curriculum. 2, the student continues to receive the services specified on the student's IEP. And 3, the student continues to participate with non-disabled students to the extent they would have in their current placement. These guardrails are the same that apply to in-school suspension. The U.S. Department of Ed emphasizes repeatedly throughout the guidance that frequent removals, formal or informal, may indicate an IEP doesn't address needs, which may result in a denial of FAPE. If the parent and district agree to change a placement after a child violates code of conduct, change is not considered removal under discipline provisions. The Department of Ed also notes information on the district making a determination on a case-by-case basis of whether a pattern of removals constitutes a change in placement under the discipline provisions in IDEA. Some more takeaways. The U.S. Department of Ed emphasizes throughout the guidance that frequent removals, formal or informal, may indicate IEP doesn't address needs, which may result in denial of FAPE, and how the use of short-term disciplinary removals or informal removals, if used repeatedly, could be a disciplinary removal. ARCs may need to address whether the IEP appropriately addresses the behavioral needs. In-school suspensions are considered disciplinary removals unless all three of the guardrails mentioned previously are met. However, it is important to recognize that even if the three guardrails are met, an in-school suspension removes the student from their appropriate least restrictive environment, and the ARC may need to consider if the IEP or the implementation of the IEP does not appropriately address the student's behavior needs, and then determine whether additional positive behavioral interventions and supports or other strategies would assist the student in the current placement. If transportation is a related services required for the provision of FAPE and included on the IEP, then a bus suspension must be treated as a suspension, and all of the IDEA's discipline procedures and protections for eligible students with disabilities would apply. In addition, transportation must be provided to a student with a disability who's placed in an IAES if transportation is required for the student to access the services provided in the IAES. However, suspension from the bus is not a removal if transportation is not part of the student's IEP and required for FAPE.